Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. We're a podcast about board games where we have opinions and conclusions formed on the basis of incomplete information. This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is brought to you by these great Saskatoon businesses. Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street, Dragon's Den Games on 8th Street, and Breakout Escape Rooms on Faithful Avenue. Hey there, I'm your host Norm, and this is Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday, a special weekly episode where a bunch of us content creators come together and let you know what we've been playing recently. And on this episode are Board on the Air, Board and Game with Andrew Bucholtz, The Tabletop Bellhop, The Meeple Dungeon, Meeple and the Moose, and Cardboard Conjecture. And I always say it, and I'll say it again. Check the show notes. There's links to the cast. Check out their stuff. And have fun. You know, enjoy.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Jordan.
And this is Board on the Air, a weekly radio show in Saskatoon. And you are listening to What Have You Been Playing Wednesday? On tonight's episode, we're talking about
Clank Catacombs, a 2 to 4 player game of the Clank series.
Yes, this is more based on the original Clank than Clank in Space.
But it has, I would say, one aspect of Clank in Space just twisted a lot more.
Which aspect is that?
Well, Clank in Space does have the modular board.
Yes. Yeah. This is the big thing with this one is the board is modular. You start with one base tile, and then you take 4 of 6 purple tiles, is that
Yeah,
right?
4 of the 6 entrance tiles.
Or
and then
safe zones.
Yeah, they're the safe zone. So if you get back to there, you're going to score points, like in the other games where below the line you lose, you won't score anything, above the line you will.
Yeah, and then all the other tiles are just shuffled, and they come out randomly as you exit a board. All tiles will fit together, and depending on what you hit, you are going to be surprised for the most part.
Yeah, there's ghost tiles, which will bring in the assassin cubes, or...
Yeah, like the all hitting,
everyone gets hit, and then they go back.
Yeah, those tiles. They're little white cubes in this one, similar to Clank Legacy.
Yeah. Both times we played it, I found it's been a lot quicker than the other Clank games.
Yeah, it's 45 minutes to an hour, I would say, is the game. Because you don't know what's coming out, it's a little bit scarier to explore.
Yes.
And I do find that there are a lot more like tile or cards that flip that you have to do attacks with.
Yeah. And there's a lot of cards in it that give you benefits for making Clank, and not a lot of cards that remove Clank.
Yeah, I didn't come across, in both games, there was not a lot of cards that pulled Clank off the board. It was all put in.
If you put Clank in, you get this benefit. If you put Clank in, you get this benefit.
Yeah, and so we've played at 4-player twice.
Mm-hmm.
First time, it was fairly even. I think everybody got out.
Everyone got out, much to the stress of one player.
Yeah, like Shea, who usually is pretty easygoing in games, got very stressed and very angry at us in Clank Catacombs. When we played the second time, 3 of the 4 of us got out.
I died
two of
before
us
exiting.
Escaped. One of us died in the safe tiles, and one
went exploring.
He went exploring, and he got a lot of tiles out, but there was no way he was getting back.
Yeah.
It still has the original Clank. You can dine and dash and start pulling tiles to try and kill people off.
Yes, and but the trick to it is you don't know when the treasures are coming out because they're in the stack of things.
That is the biggest thing. Like, when I went exploring, the first tile I pulled had a treasure. Mm-hmm. And it just made sense to me to get it.
Yeah,
right?
But then, like, the next 4 after that, no treasures, so...
Yeah, exactly. As, Norm went exploring, he couldn't find a treasure. So that really cost him, and in the end result, too many of his cubes got pulled.
Yep.
That being said, I really like this one. I've never bought the original Clank or any of its expansions. I was tempted to when it was on Kijiji last week, but we already have Clank in Space. We're in the middle of a game in Clank, or I'm in the middle of 2 games of Clank Legacy, and it just seems something that isn't needed.
Yeah, there's only so many of one type of game you really need, and both of the other 2 Clanks, like this one, Clank Catacombs and Clank in Space, are probably 2 I'd grab sooner than the original Clank.
Yeah, I think so too. With the original Clank, you have your set boards, so you know where you're going to get something and get out. And it really, from what everybody has told me, I haven't played it, but everybody has told me it's very easy to dine and dash in that one.
Yeah. Clank in Space you can, but it slows you down enough for putting out your cubes.
Yeah, Clank in Space, you have to go into 2 of the 3 boards before you can actually get a treasure. And the treasure is a long ways away in Clank in Space.
Yeah. If you get to it quick enough, you can just take the thing back.
You can, but it's
most of the time you're not going to be able to actually use it all the way back because it gets locked off.
For sure. But, just looking at Clank Catacombs itself, the new features are the lockpicks and the ghost tiles, and there's the one that has the 4 cubes that you can put on.
The Way Shrine.
The Wave Shrine. Way
Shrine.
Way Shrine. And each one you visit gives you $1 for each one you've been to, including the one you went to.
Yeah. So if a lot of them come out, you can make a lot of money pretty quick.
Yeah.
But if only one of them comes out, you're not going to get the most benefit.
For sure.
And that's the thing with this one is you can be like, okay, I'm going to hit a whole bunch of these Way Shrines, but they never come out. So you're like, okay, now what am I doing?
Yeah. And like the game itself plays like any of the Clanks.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful game.
I would agree. I would say if I want a gamier version of it, I would grab Clank in Space.
Yep.
I feel like it's a good beginning of the day game.
Yeah, I would say it's your icebreaker. It's your, it's more approachable version of Clank.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, I'm David.
And I'm Jordan.
We'll talk to you next week.
Hi, this is Andrew Bucholtz of BoardingGame.com. This week, I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit of old news, but something that I still think is pretty cool. That's the San Diego Historical Games Convention Summit Award. I've been volunteering with the SD Hist organization for about half a year now, and I really enjoyed getting to be part of the Summit Award. This was the inaugural year for the Summit Award, and its goal is to recognize a historical board game published in the preceding year, so in 2021 in this case, that most broadened the hobby through the ease of teaching and or play, uniqueness of topic, or novel approach. The SD Hist team is all about growing and broadening the historical gaming community and trying to remove some of the barriers that might keep people out of it. With that in mind, the Summit Award felt like a really good approach to me in that it's not just about the best game of the year, it's about the game that broadened the hobby the most. We got the public involved in this with nominations this past July, and a lot of interesting games were nominated. After that, in September, the judges, which were the SD HistCon board and advisory committee and honorary members as agreed to by the board, met to come up with 4 finalists. The 4 finalists selected were Red Flag Over Paris, Atlantic Chase, Nicaea, and No Motherland Without. And I want to talk about these finalists a little bit, as they all are bringing interesting things to the historical gaming hobby, and hopefully might be able to bring some interesting people in as well. First, Red Flag Over Paris, which the judges eventually chose as the winner of the first Summit Award in a December meeting. Designed by Fred Serval and with art from Donal Haggerty and publication from GMT Games, Red Flag Over Paris is a 1 to 2 player game that takes 20 to 40 minutes. It builds upon the system that Mark Herman used in Fort Sumter, which is another game I quite like. And Red Flag Over Paris adds some interesting twists to this. It also covers a really interesting and not often discussed piece of history, the Paris Commune of 1871. So there's a lot to like about it, both for the ease of access to a short game like this, to a game without a whole ton of rules, but to a game that does still offer some interesting decisions and teaches you something about history in the process. The next nominee was Atlantic Chase, with design and art from Jeremy White and publication from GMT Games. Atlantic Chase looks at the German Kriegsmarine against the British Home Fleet from 1939 to 1942, part of the Battle of the Atlantic. It's also a 1 or 2 player game and comes with a wide variety of scenarios, which can take up anywhere from 30 to 120 minutes. What's really interesting about Atlantic Chase is the originality of approach, particularly when it comes to Fog of War. It's about plotting various potential paths. Those paths then only get resolved into units at a point when there's a search or a discovery. Atlantic Chase also came with an excellent learn-to-play approach in the rules, which helped reduce many of the barriers to learning a complex game. Next, there's Nicaea, with design and art from Amabel Holland and publication from Hollandspiel. This is a 4 to 6 player game that plays in 60 to 90 minutes. It's about the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, which was an important moment for the early Christian church. And the uniqueness of theme here was a really interesting part of this one. And last but not least, there's No Motherland Without, North Korea in Crisis and Cold War. No Motherland Without is published by Compass Games, and it's designed by Daniel Bullock, with art from Daniel Bullock and Ilya Kudryashov. This is a 1 to 2 player game that takes 60 to 120 minutes. It's a card-driven game, and it covers North Korea from 1953 to present. One thing that I thought was really interesting in this is the focus on specific individuals in this regime and how they change over time, with some of them gaining more importance, some of them defecting, and so on. No Motherland Without has not just a really interesting and unique topic, but an interesting and unique approach to that topic. So those are the 4 finalists for the 2022 Summit Award from the SD HistCon. Again, Red Flag Over Paris was selected as the winner of the 2022 Summit Award. But all of these finalists did some interesting things and hopefully broadened the historical gaming hobby a bit. I was really excited to be part of putting together this Summit Award, and I'm excited for what we're going to do with it this coming year. For more on the Summit Award, check out sdhist.com/Summit Award or my site, boardandgame.com. I'm Andrew Bucholtz. Thanks for listening.
Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Bellhop segment of Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. I am Moe T, the Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, helping you make your game nights better. So the big thing that happened this past week is that I celebrated my birthday, which of course included some good food, craft beer, and of course some games. Before the birthday though, Deanna, Sean, and I sat down and muddled through our first game of Weather Machine. This is the latest from Vital Lacerda, Ian O'Toole, published by Eagle Griffin Games, hot off Kickstarter, a Kickstarter that Sean was awesome enough to back at the all-in level, which is pretty awesome. Now, I use the term muddle for a reason. This is a beefy game. While I expect a meaty game from this team, this particular one was more opaque than what I'm used to from the trio. There are a lot of moving parts going on in this game, and it's easy to forget a rule or 2 or 5 while playing. While it wasn't hard to come up with something to do in this game, I found it really difficult to figure out how to actually get there. And even when I thought I'd figured out a path to do an in-game goal or something I want to complete, I'd figure out that I missed a step along the way and had to rethink my entire turn. Things like this made the first play of this game rather frustrating, but not in a I never want to play again way, but in a wow, this is not an easy game to pick up and it's going to take some work to find the fun kind of way. And I know that alone means this game's not going to be for everyone, including people who usually enjoy heavier games. But I'm still willing to go back to it now that we've figured it out, muddled it through, read some stuff on Board Game Geek, watched the gaming rules video. I'm more prepared to dive back in knowing what we messed up the first time. But still, for an Ian O'Toole Vital Lacerda game, this one is heavy. Next, we get to the actual birthday celebrations, which started with a game of Dice Kingdoms of Valeria, along with dinner at the Chapter 2 Brewery here in Windsor. We tried out a 5-player game on the recommendation of the designer, Levi Moe, and it worked perfectly fine. I'm actually not sure why the box lists the player count as up to only 4. Now, this is a fantastic game I'll be talking about more on tonight's live show, so join us on Twitch at 9 if you want to know more about Dice Kingdoms of Valeria. Next up, back home, we played a 5-player game of the Quacks of Quedlinburg with both the Herb Witches and Alchemist expansions. Now, this is my first time ever using Alchemist. I got that for Christmas, and this is our first time trying to muddle through that one. Actually, muddle's not a bad word here, because this is nothing compared to what we went through with Weather Machine. This one wasn't that bad. There was a little confusion at first, especially on how to spend your essence and how to track it. But once we figured that out, by, say, turn 3, we had a great time. Now, I dig what Alchemist did. I wouldn't call it a must-have expansion. I do think Herb Witches is a must-have expansion. If you have Quacks, get Herb Witches. Alchemist you may or may not want to pick up. I do like what it added to the game, but it did make it longer, especially playing 5 players. Now, the big thing that I did like, though, is it gave players a reason to diversify what ingredients they buy, which is actually a cool thing, so it's not just the same people buying the same combo of ingredients every game. So I did like that aspect. Next up, we switched over to some lighter fare with Monstrosity, which didn't go over as well as I expected. I personally really dig this drawing game. This is a game where one player describes a monster based on a card you get to stare at for 20 seconds. And then everyone else tries to draw the monster and you get points for how close it is to the original image. Really cool concept for a game. A lot of fun. And you know what? Everyone had fun. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't the bundle of laughs we get with other drawing games like, say, Telestrations. I just don't know how often I grab this when I have that on my shelf as well. Now, sticking with party games, we then played Venn by the Op. This is a really neat word guessing game that uses these funky art cards and Venn diagrams to try to get your teammates. We played 2 teams and had a solid time. Though partway through, my wife pointed out this isn't the best hangout game. Like, it's a birthday party, and here we are just focused on the game. There's no real time for chatting and banter while playing. Which leads me to two 4-player games of Thrones of Valeria. Now, this is a fantastic trick-taking game. One of the best modern trick-taking games I've ever played. For more info, we reviewed it last week's podcast. There's also a review over at the blog at tabletopbellhop.com. This ended up being perfect for the 4 of us to play and hang out and talk and play on Spotify and listen to music and catch up and all of the stuff you do at a party. Now, once that game ended, it was just my wife and I. We finished off the night with some games of Racco. At that point, quite a few craft beers had been rated, reviewed, and drank, and we weren't really capable of playing anything heavier. Plus, honestly, Racco is one of those great, it's something to do while you're doing other things, right? This was we're chatting, we're enjoying each other's company, we're hanging out, and we just happen to be playing Racco and drinking beer at the same time. Now, a couple days later on Sunday, we celebrated the birthday with my in-laws, where I got some new games as gifts, which you'll get to hear about those on the podcast, or I'll be talking about them in the future weeks. But important to this show, we played a round of Dice Kingdoms of Valeria with my mother-in-law and the kids. I think I mentioned on the show, I'm not positive, may have been on our podcast, that we had been playing the game wrong. And this was my first time playing it again with the kids and my mother-in-law with the proper rules. And you know what? It's better. I'd play the game by the proper rules. It's better. Who knew? Actually, we all knew. I just messed up the first time we played together. But anyway, we all had a great time. Game went really great. Had a lot of fun with that. Which leads me to even more Dice Kingdoms of Valeria. This was yesterday on Tuesday in prep for our review tonight. This time it was just me playing by the solo rules, which I gotta say were fun. Very quick, lightning fast, really. You could finish off a round in about 10 minutes. Was enjoyable to play, but there's just too many things to try, too many things going on. So you do a harvest phase, then you do your action, then you do a harvest phase. And before you roll the dice, you're supposed to mark off a tree. But if you roll doubles, you got to do an event. And when you do an event, you got to cross off a ship. And then, wait, which I just rolled the dice. Was that the harvest phase or the second harvest phase? Did I remember to cross off a tree at the beginning of this game? And I played twice in a row, and I don't know if either game I actually played properly without messing up something. So enjoyable, but like I almost feel like someone else needs to be there to point out when I'm cheating because I forgot to do something or I did something twice. Overall, my scores were pretty good, and I ranked well based on the scoring system in the book, but again, I'm not even positive I played properly. Fun, but you know what? I'd rather play with other people. Finally, the entire Bellhop team sat down Tuesday night to play through the tutorial and prologue for Once Upon a Line. This is one of the most unique games I've ever seen. This is a scratch-off story game based on word searches. Yeah, you heard that right. It's currently live on Kickstarter. I encourage you to head over there, search for Once Upon a Line, and check the game out. It's definitely something unique. Now, I also invite you to tune into tonight's podcast recording. We'll be doing up a full preview of this game. Now, what I will say here is just as messy as it is unique, which is a problem. Now, in addition to previewing Once Upon a Line and reviewing Dice Kingdoms of Valeria, Sean and I will be talking about out-of-the-box games, truly unique board games, and I'll be sharing even more about the games I played this past week. I hope to see you tonight on Twitch for the next recording of the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast. That's it for me and this week and the games I played this week. Again, I am Moe T of the Tabletop Bellhop. Good day and game on.
Hello everybody, it's Robb and Anna Marie from the Meeple Dungeon.
Hello.
And we are back again recording for the Whatcha Been Playing Wednesdays podcast, and we have one game we want to talk about this week. What game is that, Anna Marie?
That game is Flamecraft, designed by Manny Vega, art by Sandra Tang, and published by Cardboard Alchemy.
Yeah, Flamecraft. This game has been like super popular. It's been all over the place, all over the internet, people playing this, and it had huge hype for it as well, that I was kind of unaware of. Like, I didn't really know what this game was, and then it turned out you pre-ordered it.
I did.
And we got in the fancy version of it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so this game, do you want to tell them kind of the theme about what's going on in Flamecraft?
Yes. So you live in a place where there are a bunch of, artisan dragons. They're kind of the little cousins to the big dragons that fly around everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're like baking bread and
yeah,
they're
artisan dragons. So you live in this town and there's a bunch of shops coming up, and you have the gift of Flamecraft, so you can speak to dragons. And so what you're trying to do is find out what their talents are and kind of get them jobs, put them where they're going to do their
working.
But you're going to put them where they're best suited. Mm-hmm. Is what you're trying to do, is match the dragon to the best kind of shop. Yeah. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. You're just happy little dragons and just making a fun little town.
Yeah, and the way this game kind of works is you have a main board which kind of represents the town, kind of like the village, I guess, where it's kind of like the market, sort of like it's like the.
It's kind of it's where you're going to attach all
like
your
the bazaar, sort of, right? Where it's kind of got like almost like a farmer's market.
Yeah,
set up kind of.
That's exactly what I was going to say, like a farmer's market.
Yeah,
it's
where
like
there's all these different little shops.
Main drag and all your shops.
Yeah, and there's some starting shops that start in the game that are laid out in specific order, and then you're going to add shops to it as you go. And you each take a. Like dragon,
you choose a dragon,
Meeple, or in our case we have the minis that came with it.
Yeah,
and on your turn you're going to be basically placing a dragon at one of these shops and doing a few different things. So what are we doing at those shops?
Yeah, so on your turn you can basically choose one of two options. You take your dragon and you move it to one of the shops.
Yeah, and
once you're at that shop, you're going to either gather or enchant. So if you gather. There's going to be, in every shop, there's a specific resource.
Yeah, that's like a diamond or bread. Or an anvil. Anvils or potions.
Yeah.
Things like that.
And there will be a little symbol representing that.
Yeah.
So if I were to go to, say, the shop with the anvil, I would get an anvil resource. Mm-hmm. If there were any dinosaurs there already, dragons, sorry, not dinosaurs. We've got a dinosaur game also set up on the table. Yes, but if there are other dragons there, you also get the resource that shows on their
each
card.
Dragon also has its own resource
attached to the card.
Yeah, attached symbol on the card.
It's like what their specialty is.
So you'd get all the different symbols that are at that particular business.
Yeah, so you basically get, if you're gathering, you're going to gain all the resources that you can, and then you can place a dragon. So if you have a dragon in your hand that where their symbol matches one of the ones at the store, you can, or it's going to have little spots. If it matches it, you can put a dragon down, and then
and there's only a certain amount of spots that dragons can go.
Yeah,
to.
there's three spots per each little shop. And then you get a reward when you place a dragon, and then you get to fire up one of the dragons in the village. So, or one of the dragons in the shop.
Each dragon is unique.
Yes,
and each dragon has a unique thing. Each dragon has a unique name, but there's
different types. So, like all the
types.
Diamond types have the same ability.
Yes.
All the Anvil types have the same ability.
Right. Yeah.
So, one might be get a new dragon. So then you can go to there's a little tableau of dragons laid out, and you can pick a new dragon.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
you add those to your hand for playing out later in rounds and so forth.
Yeah, one will let you like switch a dragon from one shop to another shop, and so different things like that. So you can fire up one of them. So if there's only one dragon, you can fire up that one. But if there are 3 dragons in the shop, you get to choose which one you want to fire up. And then some of the shops, so none of the starter shops have the abilities, but as you're playing out more of the shops, they'll have specific abilities that you can use on them as well. Yeah. So then you can fire up that ability. And then that's the end of your turn. So if on your turn you gathered any dragons or anything like that, you would just refill the cards.
Refill everything. And then you always, just on your next turn, you have to move from wherever you are to another spot.
Yeah, you can't start in the same one.
But if you move to a spot with another player, like if you move to a spot where I have a dragon, you have to pay me
a resource
or two or something.
Yeah. And so that's gathering. The other option you can do if you don't gather is you can enchant. So also you have a little tableau of enchantments, and they're going to tell you what you need. So that's going to use the resources that you collected in the gather to pay for these enchantments. And the enchantments are going to give you points, which are going to help you win the game. So it might say, okay, for 5 anvils and 3 diamonds, you can get this enchantment. So then you're going to spend.
And it gets you X amount of points.
Yeah. So then
those add to the shops, right? Or what?
You keep the enchantment, and it just gives you points.
What gets tucked behind the shop?
Yeah, they get tucked behind the shop. You're right.
Yes, that increases the amount of resources that the shops have. So the next time you go there, if that one's been enchanted 2 or 3 times, it's going to have like 3 or 4
diamonds or anvils
or whatever
already at the top
for every time you gather, aside from the dragons that are there.
Yeah, so you can end up getting quite a few resources when you gather. But yeah, when you enchant, so you choose one, and again, it has to match the symbol of the shop you're on. But then you can fire any number of the dragons in that shop. So if there are 3 dragons in that shop, you can fire them all.
Yeah,
and that way you get a whole bunch of stuff, right? So it kind of helps set you up you can figure out where you're going to go, so you can set yourself up for the next turn, and things like that.
And there's also fancy dragons you can get, which are the end game scoring cards and things like that, and they'll have go back and forth.
They'll have instant ones that will score you, and then end game ones.
Yeah, there's daytime and nighttime dragons. Yeah,
daytime instant, nighttime end game.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it goes. And you just go round and round and round and round until there's 2 game end triggers where either all the artisan dragons deck has run out, or what was the other
when
one?
the dragons run out, or the enchantment deck runs out.
When one of these 2 decks runs out, that triggers the end of the game, and I think everyone gets another turn or something.
Yep, and everybody gets another turn.
And then you go through end game scoring, and highest scorer wins. It's a fun one.
Yeah,
I like
so it's
this
like
one.
The highest scorer, the idea is that the highest scorer has placed the most dragons in the best suited places for them.
Yeah.
And
I think we may end up doing a full review of this game on the Meeple Dungeon podcast. Probably within the next few weeks.
It's super cute.
But yeah, it was a cute one, and it was better than I anticipated. So I guess we'll leave it at that. And if you hadn't seen, we just dropped our top 10 games of 2022 episode on the Meeple Dungeon podcast. So if you want to run over there and check that out, that'd be great. And we are going to run, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
See ya.
My name is Alex, and I write board game reviews over at meepleandmoose.com, and I'm here to talk to you today about the games I played this week for Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. This past week was a good week for gaming. I got to play Verdant, Race for the Galaxy, Crokinole, Burgle Bros 2, and Bullet Heart, in addition to the games I'm going to talk about today. I hope to play more of each of these games soon, so you can look forward to my thoughts on those in a coming episode. The first game I want to talk about is Rolling Realms by Jamie Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games in 2021. Rolling Realms was Jamie's coronavirus lockdown project. He leveraged his community to develop and play a little roll and write game via Facebook Live. I remember seeing the videos come and go, and I think they were great distractions for those who needed them at the time. Like many roll and write games, Rolling Realms gives every player the exact same setup, the same input, but lets players diverge in their choices, with the player who earns the most points at the end being the winner. Rolling Realms can scale up to any number of players. You're only limited by the components that you have. And Rolling Realms is available as a free print and play, so if your group exceeds 6, or if you want an activity to do with your friends and family who are scattered to the 4 winds, this is available to you. Rolling Realms contains 6 sets of 11 realms. Each game will have one player select the 3 realms that will be in play for that round, and then everyone prepares the same realms. One player will roll the 2 absolutely massive dice, and then each player will utilize the 2 die, choosing one realm to activate for one of the numbers rolled, and a second realm to activate for the second number rolled. Players will acquire resources and spend resources to modify the die values rolled and earn cascading bonuses to earn victory points or stars, and at the end of 9 rounds, the player with the most points is the winner. All 11 realms that come in the box play differently, and are vaguely reminiscent of Stonemaier's game's other games. The Scythe realm has you marking off a top row action to earn resource, and then if you have the resources available to you, you can spend them to also mark off a bottom row resource. The Tapestry realm has a 6x6 square grid, and each number has a different shape associated with it, and so you spend the number to fill in the grid with shapes and earn points on the rows and columns that you complete. A full game of Rolling Realms is supposed to take place over 3 rounds, and each round consisting of 9 turns. Each round has you tackling a new set of realms, meaning that on your first couple turns you'll be doing a lot of learning. Don't get me wrong, it's nice that every realm is different, and I love the variability, but if your first play of Rolling Realms is at the end of a long day, and after you've already finished a different game, your mushy brain might have trouble with the changing rule sets. Overall, I liked Rolling Realms. It was easy and inoffensive. The production quality is excellent, and if you've played a lot of Stonemaier games, you'll find yourself reminiscing over each of the bigger games that are featured here. Stonemaier seems keen on supporting this project, as there are currently 8 micro-expansions based on other games, like A Feast for Odin, Ark Nova, and Honeybuzz, to name just a few. Each expansion adds 6 copies of a single new realm, but I suspect there will always be more realms coming out to keep this game fresh. Rolling Realms is fast and fun to play. Considering a version of the game is available as a free print and play, there's no reason not to give this one a try if it sounds even the least bit interesting to you. Remember that time that I said I wasn't a solo gamer? I think it's time to give up the act. Given that I've only backed 3 crowdfunding projects in the last 3 years, and 2 of those were solo-focused games, I might have to start admitting that I actually enjoy playing a board game by myself. One Deck Galaxy by Chris Cheslick and published by Asmati Games is the follow-up to One Deck Dungeon, a game that crams a whole lot of game into a tiny box and a single deck of cards. Actually, this name is a bit of a misnomer in that there's more than a single deck of cards in the game. The One Deck name refers more to the single stack of cards that will depict the locations and events that you'll need to colonize or study. And the deck of location cards slowly depletes, and once the deck runs out, your foe becomes more dangerous, pushing you closer to losing. Here's the lowdown. Each turn, your character generates a pool of dice of varying colors, and also each turn, during the discovery phase, 4 location cards are turned face up in front of you. If there were already cards there, they don't get replaced. It just fills up to ensure that you have 4 face-up cards every turn. During the action phase, you roll all of your dice, and then you assign them to various locations. Most of the locations in the game will have either a small colored square with a number, meaning you must put a single die of the matching color with a pip value equal to the number or exceeding it, or a rectangle with a number in it, meaning that you might put multiple die of that color into that rectangle until the sum of all die placed there meet or exceed that value. You can also assign dice to your spaceship for various effects, like generating spaceships or researching location cards, which will take them out of the discovery zone and tuck them behind your spaceship for their science value. Once all of your dice have been assigned, you then resolve everything. Each location will tell you how many influence completing each row will net you. You tuck a card from the one deck behind the location card to count as influence, and if any location's influence meets or exceeds this threshold, you get to claim the card, either tucking it to the left of your character, boosting your die pool for the next rounds, or tuck it below your character card, earning you a tech that you can use to manipulate your dice in future rounds. And that's the basics of the game. Each foe has their own card with rules on how they act. The Meeple colony fleet can suck die from the supply onto the card, forcing you to pay a certain amount of resources to release them. And every 3 turns, they get a new colony. If the number of colonies they have doubles your character's Federation level, you lose the game. And I lost this game real fast. I failed at increasing my Federation level at all, and the Meeple stole all my blue die. I know from playing One Deck Dungeon that this game can feel really hard and even impossible when you first start, but there's a skill ceiling to work up to. Yes, there's lots of luck in the game, but learning how to mitigate that luck is what makes this interesting. I know I'll be returning to One Deck Galaxy soon to explore the other characters and foes. I imagine just like Bullet Heart, some characters will do better against certain foes than others. Either way, I'm excited to explore what this game has in store. And that's all I played this week. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find my contact information and my other board game reviews on my website, meepleandthemoose.com. Have a happy Wednesday.
Hey there, everybody. Norm here from the Cardboard Conjecture podcast. And I'd like to talk about 2 games, specific games that I played. I've played a few, but I want to talk about 2 games. One of them I've played once before, and I'm still kind of like on the fence about it. And the second one I'm going to talk about is the foundation of my upbringing. And so the first one is Smash Up, and it was Jordan's pick for Gamers Garage, and however snooty you want to be. And he picked Smash Up, designed by Paul Peterson and published by Alderac Entertainment Group, or AEG, as you know. And the tagline: combine 2 awesome factions and battle opponents to see who rules. And so basically, if you've never played Smash Up before, the word, there's a double kind of entendre to the word. First of all, you smash up 2 different decks to make one complete deck, because you're playing not necessarily deck building, but a hand management. Yeah, sure, there you go. So what you do is you have this deck of 2 different factions with different abilities, because the point is that each faction has 2 bases. And if you're playing 4 players, do the math, you're going to have that many bases. And I think you only, at 4 player, you only put out, if I can visualize, 5 bases at a time. And each base has a number value on it. And also with that number value, because that's the target value that you're trying to get to trigger the base. Now, the base also has a first, second, and third point value system. Sometimes it's kind of balanced, sometimes it's completely out of whack. And every time, each one of those bases has its own power that gets triggered by certain things that happen to it or onto it, or so on and so forth, right? So it's one of these games where the cards kind of direct the rule choices in the moment, okay? And so what you're doing is, on your turn, you're basically putting a card down, and you're trying to vie for area control, I guess, and superiority. By when you trigger the value of the base, you evaluate the points immediately. And sometimes second place is better than first place, because first place might have lower points, but then the event or the power of that base might benefit the first place player, right? I mean, there's just crazy stuff that happens, and it's honestly down to it. It's a race to 15 points. So you're trying to strategically get as many base wins as possible to gain points. Now, I haven't even gotten to the interesting part. That's the mechanical structure of the game. Now, the factions, wow. Like, I'm talking across, if you could think about it, there's a card deck with it and have like the separation of power cards amongst those. Because I had, here we go, you ready for it? I had sharks, yeah, powerful sharks, and princesses. I had sharks and princesses. That was my deck, and it was awesome. It was fun. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the Jordan, Jeff, and Dave had, but there was some crazy combinations that did some crazy things, and it's basically like a snowball fight. I mean, as far as the energy goes, because there's no crazy depth to it. It's just pushing buttons and pulling levers and making things happen. And it says it plays 45 minutes, and it's pretty accurate. It's not a complex game, but it's a fun game, right? So if this hit the table, I'd totally play that again, just because of the simple fact that there are so many faction combinations that you will be entertained, win or lose. Hopefully I was, at least. So yeah, that's Smash Up designed by Paul Peterson and published by AEG. Now, moving on to, I should have like a choir of angels singing in the background. I had the opportunity, and I'm so glad this happened. I got an email from a colleague that being a high school teacher, about 15 years ago, there was a bunch of us that at this one high school that we all taught at, that lunchtime, we had 3 crokinole tables going, and we would sprint to the staff room at lunchtime and try to get in. And for like 3 years, the crokinole table ruled, right? And so I got an email, and it's like the Blues Brothers putting the band back together. And we had a crokinole night, and 3-4 boards came out, and man, that was just so much fun. The lingo came back, like all the vocabulary that we use, like the slang about certain shots, shooting it through the eye of the needle, and RTB, do too much, right? There was just all of this kind of like mind game stuff that came out again. And it was socially speaking, which is why I love this hobby. Socially speaking, there was so much reconnection going on, and so much, just positive vibes going on in that room. Now, crokinole. This is probably the oldest game, because it says 1876, and being a Canadian history teacher, this is Canada's original game. And if you've never heard of it and you don't know what I'm talking about, think on the top of the table, picture a 4x4 table, and in that middle of the table is around a 3-foot circle, and inside this circle is another game board circle, and visualize a dartboard, or if you're familiar with the sport of curling, the house of a curling rink, but inside the secondary, the ring just before the center point, are pegs that are equally spaced apart on the perimeter of this circle. I would say the third ring, the inside ring, which is the 15 point, and then outside is at 10, and then the outside of that, the perimeter is 5, and that's where you have the shooting line. So what you're doing is you have these discs, depending on how many people are playing, you have a certain amount of discs, and on your turn, it's basically kind of shuffleboard meets curling-ish dartboard kind of thing. And you can play to a certain amount of points, or you can play to who wins each end or round. And it's one of those games where it can be as casual or as serious as you want it to be. And I had to remember to bring my rules lawyer mental kind of frontal lobe want, had to dial it back a little, because I come from the school of Crokinole where it's called the one cheek rule. Well, first of all, you don't touch the board. You don't rotate it. It's like you don't touch the Mona Lisa. You don't touch the Crokinole board. Second thing is, once you're playing, you do not move that chair, because I grew up with the one cheek rule, and I don't even think I need to explain that one. Have to have at least one cheek on the chair. And let's move on. The game system can be, like I said, as casual or as serious as you want it. And we had always played to 200. No, wait. Yeah, to 200. And the evening started and everyone was like, oh man, am I rusty? And by the end of the night, you can hear people going, all right, a double and a cookie, right? Which means a double takeout, and we're dropping it in the middle for 20 points. And about 80% of the time it happened. So you could just hear how much I love this game. And as far as dexterity flicking games goes, you could try other ones, but this is the one. It's the one. I feel like it's Highlander right now. Well, that being said, I'd like to thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to also thank the content creators for contributing to this episode, because it wouldn't happen without you. And that being said, keep your stick on the ice and take care out there, eh?